This episode is sponsored by the IoT job site, the world's only dedicated space for applying for and advertising IoT vacancies across the world. Register now for job alerts or get in touch via let's talk at theiotjobsite.com.
Welcome back to the IoT podcast show. As always, I'm your host, Tom White. Roy Dagan joins me today, CEO and co-founder of SecuriThings. Guys, before we get into it, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the show. You'll get notified every time there's a new episode. And as always, I don't care how you're connected, just as long as you're connected. Roy, welcome to the IoT podcast show.
Hey Tom, thanks for inviting me. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here. Certainly one of my particular interests is IoT security. So learning a bit more about SecuriThings is going to be of real interest to me. So as usual, just kick off, Roy. Can you explain to our listeners and viewers who you are, what got you into IoT and what your company does?
Sure. So I've been in the industry for quite a few years. If we go back, I started my career in the Israeli Defense Forces and one of the intelligence units. Served there for quite a few years. After that, everything I did was product management. So I had multiple product management roles in different companies, RSA, Security, Pioneer, NICE, and others. And it was product management, managing teams of product managers and so on. And it was always kind of areas which were focused on either cyber, risk, or intelligence. So that's kind of, the different areas which I covered. And then together with my co-founder, Ranan, we decided it's time to start SecuriThings. That was a few years ago. And happy to also, tell you a bit about that and how all that happened.
Yeah, please. I mean, I'm curious, right? So many years ago, I used to do work with what was NDS, News Data Systems, that did conditional access for the television industry. And over the years, I've come across some fantastic Israeli computer scientists and a very heavy penchant towards security, right? Why is it, in your view, that Israel has produced so many fantastic, computer scientists and people involved in system level security?
I think it's a lot to do with just deep tech and just kind of that passion to deep tech and cyber technology. Typically involves that kind of level of technology, right? It's less kind of the basic apps, which also obviously have tech, but cyber I think is a bit deeper in kind of its nature. So that's kind of with our background and with the intelligence units and all that here and in Israel, it kind of draws us, I think, into that direction kind of naturally.
Yeah, sure. No, it's always been a curiosity of mine, but yeah, I as you say, people that want to get into deep tech and cyber, it can be a cultural thing, right? And certainly,
exactly.
Yeah. And obviously, you, as you said, you started life from a military context, and well heralded as some fantastic people there when it comes to security and defense, and many businesses have spawned, actually, haven't they? From people that have served military time in Israel, haven't they?
Yeah. So many, friends of mine are either co-founders or executives in other companies. So it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, fantastic. And talk to me a little bit about Ranan. So Ranan's obviously not here today, but he's your co-founder of SecuriThings. Apologies. And you've been going for roughly 7 years now.
A bit less, more around 6 years, something like that. But Ranan, we know each other from RSA. So he also worked at RSA. He's kind of this technologist. He loves technology. He was there, he was a developer, team lead, architect, did kind of various roles on the technology side. I was more, again, on the product management side. And then also just met a couple of years later, a few hours after RSA, and we just started chatting about IoT security and kind of how we can, change or build a company in this domain.
Yeah, fantastic. So SecuriThings. SecuriThings Horizon is being heralded as a first of its kind as a software-only solution to automate operational management, large-scale IoT deployments. let's talk about that. Well, I mean, what are the key features the solution provides and benefits to the device security industry as such, really, Roy? Curious to know about that.
Sure. So I think I'll start with a bit about background and how we kind of started with IoT security and then evolved to the area of what we coined as IoTOps, because we were speaking with customers and partners about the concepts of IoT security and a solution which was really focused on IoT security. And what we learned, which was really interesting, is that there are teams within enterprises that are responsible for these devices, but nobody has ever built the IT system for these devices. Right. So if you look at the IT side of the house, there's so many systems and so many different categories of products. Then you look at these teams, which are responsible, for example, for the physical security devices, right? Cameras, access control systems, intercoms, and the rest of these operational devices, or the building management devices. And nobody took the time to kind of pull up a solution that has the same kind of IT capabilities, but which are really relevant for these devices. And that kind of kept these teams behind with a lack of tools, doing things very manually or just retroactively. So finding that device isn't working or isn't secure, and then trying to see, okay, how are we going to deal with this after someone points out that that isn't working. So initially we were surprised, but then we saw, okay, what's trivial for us or trivial in the IT space just isn't that trivial. And we started analyzing, the devices and the ecosystem, and we found that there is significant pain to these teams, and it requires a dedicated solution, right?
Yeah.
So that's when we decided, okay, let's take what we have, which was really focused on the cyber portion of the challenges of these devices, add more capabilities, which are more around the operational management and compliance aspects, and create that kind of IoT ops category and solution. You asked about the challenges. So what we're seeing is, if you're managing, if you're an enterprise, you have a dozen devices, a couple of dozen devices, you're probably fine. It's manageable. You'll do some stuff manually. You'll be fine. When you get to a certain scale of devices, and typically enterprises have hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of these devices, then it really becomes a pain. It becomes a liability, and you have no real normal way of monitoring, and so on with these devices. And the challenges, span from risk detection of what is actually happening with these devices. Right, it's very different from your laptop or server, which IT is monitoring. Right, the camera, nobody has the capabilities on it to monitor it at the moment. But then also the status verification. Are these devices even working properly? Is the device connected? If it's camera, is it recording? If it's an access control panel, is it working? Is the door, can we open those doors? Is everything functioning properly? And it's hard to know when things go down. There's no kind of solution today that says, okay, something is not working properly. Then what we're seeing is that when organizations can figure out that something isn't working properly, the question is, how do you handle an incident? Do you have the right data? Do you know if it's the device or something else within the network, which may be the cause for that issue? Then the next level is, okay, you found out, but now you figured that you have 10 devices, 20, 50, 100 devices that aren't working properly or need an upgrade or need pass rotation. How are you going to do that today? Very extremely challenging. And then I'd say last is just the notion of compliance and knowing what you have out there, which devices have vulnerabilities, when have you updated firmware versions of these devices, and all these together are kind of pains that pretty much I'd say every enterprise with a physical presence, every organization with a physical presence has today.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a really valid point, and some really clear features there, and differentiation of the business compared to what may be on the market as such now, right? Do you think some of those features there are clear differentiators around your business, and are there many people trying to do what you're doing?
Yeah, there are. I wouldn't say many people are more in the IT space.
Mm,
Okay, there are companies. There's definitely other companies which are trying to tackle and solve this challenge. From maybe different aspects, different angles. But there's definitely a need, and there's definitely a market which is just growing.
yeah, absolutely. And so, on that note, in terms of a growing market, we talk a lot about that on the show. I mean, cybersecurity has become really paramount to all IoT devices, whether or not people think about it when they should, or if they're doing it as an afterthought, time tells, but hopefully people start to think about it slightly before now. I've seen some interesting enterprise solutions that can, cover various aspects and industries such as airports, casinos, corporate and educational campuses. I'd be curious to know a little bit more around Horizon, the platform, and how it works in these use cases, Roy.
Sure. So if you think about all these, so you mentioned airports, casinos, campuses, they have thousands of devices. A small one may have 1,000, but typically it's way more than that. And these are mission critical devices. In an airport, if think about cameras or the panels and all those are down, you have a significant problem. That's probably bringing the operation to a halt. Casinos, you need to monitor what's happening within casinos. Otherwise, in some cases, you need to start closing the tables. In educational campuses, it's part of campus safety, right? So you want, if there's an incident in a street corner, when that officer, the dispatch is on the way, you want them to have the video feed in real time to know what they're up against. Okay, so what we're seeing is in each of these areas, organizations are paying hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars for these devices, right? And every year, and for services around these devices and working with system integrators. And they want to make sure that the device is always up, running, available, and secure. At the same time, they know they have teams which are managing these devices, and they want to manage them in an efficient manner and secure. And that's exactly where Horizon, where an IoTOps solution, what we bring, really brings to the table. So it enables them in real time to monitor the entire environment. Okay, so the devices, but also other dependencies of those devices in the network, enables them to monitor from a risk perspective, but also from a health and kind of predictive maintenance perspective. So in the system, we can say, okay, this set of devices is about to fail, and just so you know, it's almost end of life. So you should think about replacing it in these devices in any case. Then it allows them to perform all kind of automation tasks. Okay, so they can, in a click of a button, start upgrading devices in the campuses or in the airport. They can rotate password. They can restart devices. But all these, which are just, especially today when you're seeing there's more, obviously, IT scrutiny also on these devices, then you need to start performing, or enterprises are looking for ways to perform it. So some enterprise have been able to, for a while, to do things manually. But then it really depends on the scale. When you get to the hundreds and thousands of devices and you need to update multiple systems at the same time, it's not really possible. What you see is that you need a system which can automate all those tasks. So you can just, click a button, select a bunch of devices, see which one you actually want to deal with, not necessarily need to, to perform these actions on all devices, and then just in a click of a button, let the system do its thing, but verify also once devices are back online, up and running, then everything is working properly. So that's kind of the core. And that's, we mentioned airports, casinos, campuses, but again, the way we see it, it's every organization with a physical presence, right? Because once you have a physical presence, that means you have a large number of devices. You have a large number of devices scattered across that large physical presence. It means it's different from the standard IT space, right? It's challenging to get. In many cases, you need to roll a truck out, right, to get to that devices if you don't have a better way to do things. That makes it expensive. It's pretty costly for every device, for every issue that you identify with the device to start rolling trucks out, especially if there's a better way to do things based on all the data that we can fetch from the devices. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, certainly. I think, I think the clear thing that you mentioned there is how you do this at scale, right? And I think that's the important aspect. It's easy to do this when you've got a handful of devices,
Exactly.
Right? But when you're talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions, depending on where you are, certainly on these campuses as well, right? You're talking huge,
Areas.
sprawling
Exactly.
areas. So how do you do that? So
Exactly. With with standard IT, you can always call an employee or a dev team or someone and say, "Hey guys, I need this device, or let me connect to this device, right? Let me log in for this device to check what's going on, to fix it." With these devices, it's just different. They're out there in the field. It's not that easy.
mm, mm. I mean, Roy, obviously IoT device security is still one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue to the ecosystem. What is your view, in particular, on the biggest challenges that need to be addressed for IoT device security?
So I think it requires multiple teams to work together, right? Because there's an ecosystem within IoT, right? There's you have manufacturers, you have system integrators, you have enterprises, organizations. Everybody's there ready to help, and serve the enterprises. In this case, if we're talking about these types of enterprise devices, and you need to find a way to make these parties work together to bring a solution, which at the end of the day is there to help the enterprise. So even if we solve something from the manufacturer side, the enterprise still needs to know what's going on.
Mm,
The fact the manufacturer will say, okay, listen, my device is secure, that's not enough, right? I'm the CISO, I'm within the enterprise, I need to know what's going on. And again, it's not just about the way we see it. With these devices, it's operational devices.
mm,
So security is one aspect, but then you need to see, are all my devices operational, up to date? Are they compliant and secure? Okay, so I have my own standards, or there's regulations that I need to adhere to. Do I have a robust incident plan? So if something happens with these devices, what am I going to do about it? And then again, also, is there an automated way? So let's say I do find that there's an issue with the devices. How can I quickly and automatically solve those issues? But I think at the end of the day, it requires kind of the ecosystem to work together from manufacturers, system integrators, and enterprises themselves.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes that can be a challenge in itself, right? That collaborative part, for everyone to work together in order to keep to secure link, right? Because your security is as long as its weakest link, right? And again, you've got three different stakeholders looking at the security of this device. Is that one of the challenges? Do you see, in your view, the collaborative approach to device security?
Yeah, and I think we really need to think about the incentives, right? And
Mm,
and at the end, who is ultimately responsible? At the end, if we're talking about those devices which are for enterprises, then the enterprise is responsible, right? The devices are within the enterprise. If something goes south, the enterprise wants to have that level of visibility and control like they have in the IT side.
mm,
Okay, so
mm,
you need a way to not just say again the devices are secure, but give that level of visibility and control to the enterprise itself. So the enterprise itself will say, okay, I know I have the control, I have the visibility, the devices are in a good state, in a good condition. Okay, so I think it all kind of leads to that, because at the end of the day, everybody's there to really serve the enterprise and provide the best devices, with the best technology and the best capabilities in terms of the operational capabilities of the devices. And manufacturers are doing crazy things, amazing things today, but we need to kind of find a way and incentives to work together. So when it meets the enterprise, the devices are enterprise ready,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like any other system today, which meets the enterprise, you can plug it into other systems, single sign-on and all kind of capabilities, which are just basic for
Mm.
enterprises today. So that's kind of what I see as key and what's really needed.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree, and it's a very valid point. I mean, the question kind of, the question is, as technology develops, is it going to become harder to secure devices and networks? But for me, is this logarithmic in the sense of, is it going to become a lot more complex based upon incremental increases in technology, or do they marry kind of at the same level? Um, because one would imagine it is going to become slightly more complex, but how much more complex? And I'd be curious to know your thoughts on that.
So I think it still needs some basic functionality, right? Let's start with like basic visibility and control. So we have something in terms of kind of even the architecture and who is responsible and who gets that visibility and control. Because ultimately, the enterprise want that level.
Yeah.
But then what you're seeing, which is part of the challenge we're seeing today, it's not even the future, right? You're seeing today there's more devices, there's more vendors, there's more device types, the variance, it's all about the variance, right? It's not like a single device type, single firmware version. No, no, no. When you see it in an enterprise environment, it's complicated.
Mm.
Even today, it's really complicated. You have different vendors, different device types, different models of devices, even from, obviously the same vendor, different firmware versions running, and it's a complete matrix
Mm.
which you now need to deal with. And as we move forward, I believe it will, to some extent, it will become even more complex. And you'll also have, kind of autonomous devices and with more capabilities on the edge. So the devices themselves will become stronger, which is obviously also from a cybersecurity perspective, there is advantage to that, but there's also, a disadvantage. There's also a concern with that. So yeah, I do believe it will become more complex. I think it's already there, right? We
Mm.
don't need to wait for the future because the complexity is already there and it's just across enterprises today. And that's exactly what we decided. Okay, we need to kind of focus on this and see already now because it's not. Sometimes with IoT we talk about IoT of the future.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
devices are going to be out there, and the IoT has been talked about. This, right, for years. But IoT is already within the enterprise, and there is a challenge today, and that's what we're focused on, right? The challenge that is today, not what's going to be out there in a few years.
Mm. Mm. Well, yeah, and that's a really interesting point because the challenge is today, um, and we're not at the amount of devices that we could be. But I think common platforms, connectivity between the hyperscalers and the vendors will enable this to happen, and also a common understanding of security as well, and a feeling of confidence around that will enable more proliferation of devices. With energy harvesting, for instance, as well, and the advancements that are making there. I spoke about that on an earlier podcast. It's only going to go up, right?
I think one interesting word he said there is really confidence, right? Confidence,
Mm.
trust,
Mm.
right? And especially in the future, I think when devices meet the enterprise, they really need to become kind of enterprise ready,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's kind of the concept of how do we help make devices which are ready to meet the enterprise, ready to meet an enterprise network and enterprise requirements, because that's not a simple task.
No, no. I'm going to ask you a really tough question, and you're probably
Shoot.
going you're probably going to hate me for it, right? But I'm really curious. I mean, you speak very articulately. Your business is great. You know what you're doing, and that's clear for anyone to listen and to see. Um, how do we make security more important to people producing devices and systems and tools and products? How do we put security at the forefront of their mind when often it's seen as an afterthought?
So I think what we're seeing is demand coming again. It's all about the enterprises, right? So it depends. If you're talking about devices for the home, it's a different topic, right? Or consumer devices, I think that's something different. But where we are focused on and where it's devices which meet the enterprise, it's really about the enterprises saying, "Hey guys, we need devices which again are ready for enterprise environments
Mm.
for 2022, right? And we will help you. Like enterprises are happy to provide kind of also their guidance of what needs to change and how these devices should fit and should work within a complex enterprise environment and running on networks. And in some cases, in many cases, it's the same networks at
Yeah,
all other devices within the enterprise. So it's really, I think it should really, and we're seeing already, by the way, that that's happening. Enterprises are demanding that those improvements. So not just the operational improvements, better devices in terms of what they can do, but also better improvements of how a device meets the enterprise in the right way, more from the IT aspect of that device.
yeah, yeah. Roy, I mean, fantastic. I've really enjoyed this and really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit about your views on this. You're clearly very well versed and also passionate, I would say, about this, right?
That's the only way.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's your business, right? You're involved in it from the ground up. Roy, I want to ask you. We're coming to the end of the show today, and as usual, some of our latest episodes, people will be hearing some of the questions that we've got from previous guests. So, Anil Barrett, Senior Director of Product Management, and Matt Newman, Director of Product Management from Technicolor. Technicolor are involved in the IoT industry in a number of different ways. Started life, obviously, in Paris 100 years ago in the movie industry, and now looking at various ways in which they can get their team deployed out into the field to help on IoT projects. They ask you this question. What risk and security issues do you see coming up more and more on IoT devices? And what risk mitigation technologies do you recommend that the industry adopts?
Good question. So I think it goes back again. We look at it, the way I look at it, I categorize it as cyber, compliance, and operational. Okay, in terms of the risks. And in each one, there's a few more. If we dive into the details, as we spoke earlier, in cyber, it's just okay. How do we know what the posture of a device is once it meets the network, not in the factory, right? Once it's on the network in a live production environment, what's going on with that device? Then on the operational side, compliance. I think it's clear. What do I have? Like when have I rotated password, or if ever, right? Which vulnerabilities are out there? Then on the operational aspects, other devices, this sounds so basic, but are the devices even working properly? Right? They've been out there for years. In some cases, it can be 5, 6, 7 years, some cases more. Okay, are they still working? Are they connected back properly to their backend system? Or maybe they're working and they're just sitting, on the network, but they're doing nothing, and the backend system is not seeing them. And then also operational with these devices, because it's IoT devices in the field, it's all around the operations and service of these devices. And when we find out that there's an issue with the device, okay, how do we fix it? Do we need to roll a truck out and all the things which are just those are kind of the standards today. And I think to answer the rest of the question, and it's a bit maybe self-serving, but I think we created a category which is just that. That's everything we do. So everything that we believe in an enterprise environment that is required is what we're working hard on as a team. And it's just fascinating to see for us and for me, for my team, when new customers have the system deployed in their environment and they see it working with their devices. Think about the first time they see that level of visibility and control, right, in their own dashboard, not in the demo environment. And for us, it's just great to see, and they're like, wow, okay, these are all the devices we have. We can see what's happening, which are connected, and everything is real time. So again, I apologize that it's a bit self-serving, but I think we're just, we're excited, and we're bringing a solution that we truly believe is helping and changing teams. It's the first IT system that has been brought to these teams, and that's why it's so. That's why you see me, I'm excited. I'm passionate, and when I see the team, when they see new customers onboarded, looking at the system, that's just it just makes us happy.
Yeah. Well, look, I think not self-serving at all, right? I mean, it would be churlish if you're not to talk about what your business does, certainly in response to that question. And I think you've done it in a very, very pragmatic way. Roy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today. Where can people find out more about your business? I assume online, social media, bits and pieces?
Yeah, www.securithings.com, LinkedIn, pretty much across. Yeah.
All right, excellent. Roy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on to the IoT podcast show.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Tom. Enjoyed it.
And as usual, if you'd like to find out more about the IoT podcast, please join us on LinkedIn and Twitter under the IoT podcast. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on IoT device security and how we combat some of the barriers that we have around device security in general. Our website is theiotpodcast.com. Simply type that into Google. We're number one, don't you know? And we look forward very much to seeing you on the next episode. As always, cheers.